Well, Davey, I'm officially a Mandy Hale fan.
That's right. Does it make you when you like hear? Does it make you want to like put your hand up and just kind of put your hands
ladies,
up?
All the single ladies like that. Yeah, I was trying not to. Like, I didn't want to be that person, but I confess it was in my head. Like the whole time I was listening.
Is everybody who listened to this thought about that.
I mean,
unless they've been
Beyonce
living under
just
a
her
rock
influence
for the past 25
it's everywhere.
years.
Yeah.
I love it.
I did. I wanted to throw my hands up. No, I loved a lot of what she had to say, especially when she talked about like friends ghosting her in times of trouble. Because I think, single or not, we can all kind of relate to what that feels like when somebody doesn't offer us the support that we expect, or when they ghost us, or
good.
Yeah, just really, really appreciated that. And
I think
that can be part of the pain. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it's important along that note to go. There's so many different circumstances that we can experience in life that we can take as classroom circumstances and learning experiences and go, how would I do this differently on the other side of the table? So I think mainly I think about that when it comes to like if you have a bad boss, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of butting up against your boss and stuff. Well, okay. Well, when you become a boss, if and when, right? Mm-hmm. If you now have you're a leader of a team or whatever, what kinds of things can you learn from that experience to say, okay, here's what not to do. Here's how this person that I'm leading feels, right? And I think the same thing is true when it comes to those kinds of friendships. It's like, well, how do I be a good friend? Even though that's a very wounding, painful experience for your friends not to show up for you in those times of struggle. Right, what does that mean now for me to be a good friend?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is it's just, what I've experienced too before, and this has been very sobering, is that that I have been guilty of doing the exact same thing that other people have done to me.
Yeah, that's never fun when you're like, oh wait, I'm the plank in my own eye or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's like, I was thinking about that when she was saying that. I'm going, man, I think I've ghosted people.
Yeah.
And yes, I've been ghosted, and it's like,
right.
And so it becomes this sobering reality of,
wow,
I really need grace in this too.
It's true. So true.
But okay, so we are in the pattern of answering your questions that you're posing on the community platform, nothingiswasted.com/community. Join our community platform for free and pose your questions there on the main discussion feed. Aubrey and I are going to take those in these segments and we're going to answer them. And one of the questions I think that pertains really well to this episode is someone asked, do you ever ask the question, why did this happen to me? Do you ever ask the question, why did this happen to me? And I think this is appropriate because whatever the season we found ourselves in, right? Like, why do I not have a spouse? Why do I not have kids? Why did this tragedy happen? Why did I lose my job? Why did this happen to me? Do you ever ask yourself that question? I would say,
I want to hear what you have to say.
That's the short answer. Yes, I have asked myself this question many times. And so, Aubrey, why don't you take that first?
I was thinking that yes. I mean, maybe I sound like kind of a crybaby or something, but I ask that a lot in seasons of pain and suffering. I mean, I tend to be a little more dramatic anyway, and I'm thankful that the Lord loves me and knows me. Yeah, I'm an Enneagram 4. God knows that. God made me as I am. God is sanctifying me. But I definitely, I kind of have let me be a little funny and then let me get a little serious.
Sure.
I do have a little bit of a dramatic propensity. And so I can definitely be like, woe is me. Like I can make myself a martyr if I'm not careful.
You know what's so funny to me is like, I have trouble putting you in the box of an Enneagram 4 because I've really never seen that side of you. I know
my husband could tell you some things
so professionally with me and with it, right?
Thanks,
and
baby.
So,
Thanks.
I mean, just as you're listening to this, you're probably like, well, do you guys not hang out all the time? Aubrey and I are close, but we talk once a month, right?
It's not we do like this once a month.
We've got life going on. We've got all kinds of things. And then we try to find some times that we're able to like connect and stuff. And so we're not doing life together. So I don't see you in those spaces. And so I have always had trouble putting you in the bucket of an Enneagram 4. I'm like, man, she hides that because I know other 4s that can really like get into that deep,
I've also,
dark.
I mean, to be fair to me, I've done the Enneagram work for over 20 years. And so like I've done some 4 work for a very long time. So some of that is like not me hiding it, but me like God has done some good work in my life. So but you ask my husband, he'll tell you that like 4 Aubrey shows up. And I do.
Well, he's a 7 and he
he's a 7.
hates anything like that, right? So that could be more opposite in that. In that category.
Yeah. We'll have to have a whole other podcast conversation about that. So yes, man. Do I ask why? Yes. On a serious note though, I mean, I wrote a book about lament and why is one of the lament questions. How is one of those lament questions? And so I actually, now some people will tell you should never ask God why. You should just trust him. I actually don't think that's biblical.
I disagree.
We see very faithful followers of Jesus. By the way, we see Jesus doing it on the cross to his Father. Why have you forsaken me? Like,
so good.
We are allowed, we are invited, we are given the biblical language by God himself to ask that question, because if we don't ask it of God, we're going to turn to the world. We're going to turn to numbing. We're going to turn to addiction. And so God would rather you run to him with your questions of why and how could you and what is going on, God, than walk away from him in doubt and despair and anger. And so I'm telling you, as raw as you need to be, you are invited by the God who gave himself to you and for you to ask him your why questions. Wow. It's faithful, it's biblical, and that's what brings healing.
That's so good. That's so good. That is exactly what I was thinking, Aubrey. You have to. It is necessary that you go through that step of asking why. It's typically the first question you're asking.
Yeah.
One of the things we do in that webinar, you guys have probably heard us talk about the 5 steps to taking back your story, that webinar that we do. That's what I teach. There's 5 steps. It's really 5 questions you have to ask, and they typically go in this order. This is typically the journey. The first one that we talk about is why, and try to debunk that whole notion that you shouldn't question God. You shouldn't ask why. So yes, the answer is yes. I ask why a lot, especially in the beginning. I was asking why a lot, and God meets you in that why.
Yep.
And that's what's crazy. Now, here's the thing. He doesn't often explain to you why.
Right. God does not explain himself very often.
Right. He answers, but there's not often an explanation, right?
Yeah.
Part of it is because our brains are so tiny compared to the vastness of the mysteries of God. We can't understand it. We just can't. His ways are much higher than ours. His ways are mysterious. I believe that one day we will. I believe that one day, like, we'll see Jesus and it'll be like, oh, wow. Okay. Right. I get it. Right. And that's an encouragement. I derive that encouragement a lot when I think about like Amanda, my late wife that passed. Like, I believe she sees the full picture, that Jesus is giving her the full picture. And so she's just cheering me on, right? At the end of the race, like, come on, keep going. Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's helpful for me. So,
she is. She's in that great cloud of witnesses.
That's true.
That's
great
biblical.
Cloud of witnesses.
Yep.
That's good.
She is. She's cheering you on.
So the why is important, but God's not often going to give you that explanation, and so he'll end up shifting your questions as you ask why. Yeah. But you can't skip over why, because why is a prerequisite to the next question or the next several questions, and those other questions are what lead you to healing. And so I would say that and then God's going to offer something greater than explanation.
That's right.
He's going to offer you consolation, and then he's going to offer you restoration. And so here I am being all preacher and bringing all these to the rhyming, but it is, this is the reality. So I would say, yes, absolutely. And I would encourage you. I think that, implicit within this question is not just a, do you ever, but also like, well, how do you grapple with this? That's what you have to do, is you just have to take that why to the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no replacement for that. I can't give you answers as to why. Aubrey can't give you answers. No guest that we have on this podcast.
Right.
Now we can pontificate and we can wrestle with you and we can grapple and we can like bring insight from our own journey into this, and we can bring scripture and we can bring, but the Lord is going to meet you in that why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a beautiful psalm, and it's a short one if you need one to read, Psalm 13, where David is it's a lament psalm. He's not asking why, but he is asking how. How long, O Lord? How long, O Lord? And then you see David in the middle of the psalm, he kind of shifts to begin like remembering some good things about God. Oh, but God, I'm asking this question, but I remember. And then by the end, he's worshiping God again. And so I think that's the journey we're all on. And it won't necessarily take the few paragraphs of lines of a poem like a psalm, but the life kind of spiritual journey is to ask God those questions, remember his goodness, and he'll show up with his presence. And that's why Davey and I are both saying, yes, we ask. And you are meant to ask God your ways.
Yep. And can I put this, I'll kind of add this on the end of it. This goes back to what we were saying earlier about embracing, right? And like embracing what is. Because as we ask these questions, really what we're saying is like, we don't accept what is. So we're asking these questions, right? Mm-hmm. But the end of that journey, or, down the road of that journey, is coming to a place of contentment and finally acceptance and embracing. So then you can start to ask other questions like, well, what do I do from here? Like, how do you want me to participate in this? Like, what is, so every one of us has to get to a place of contentment in whatever season we're in. That's what Paul challenged each one of us in the New Testament, right? That he had found contentment, whether in abundance, whether in poverty, no matter the season that he was in, he's finding contentment. And that's shalom. That's the peace that we're all desiring and craving. And so the Lord takes us on that journey to that. So again, questions are a prerequisite. They're a prerequisite. So we want to help you wrestle with that. nothingiswasted.com. We have all kinds of resources there for you. We actually have a pain to purpose toolkit that's there for you. And it brings out some of these questions. It's like the top 10 questions that people ask when it comes to pain and suffering. And so we do some teaching in that stuff. And so you can go and check some of that stuff out. nothingiswasted.com, again, where we want to help you partner with God to take back your story. We would love to also thank Sleeping at Last for providing all the music for the Nothing is Wasted podcast. Download and stream his music anywhere you can download and stream music. You can follow us on Instagram at Nothing is Wasted Ministries. Follow me at Davey Blackburn, and follow Aubrey at AubSamp. Hey friend, if you liked this episode, be sure to like and subscribe so that you can stay in the loop every time Nothing is Wasted releases a piece of content here on this YouTube channel.